Hi, I'm Brittany Butcher, and welcome to Let's Take a Walk with Charlie Feld, brought to you by the Feld Group Institute. In this podcast, we'll dive into insightful conversations with Charlie, covering everything from critical strategic blind spots to overlooked assets that drive value every day. Today, Charlie is joined by John Jacobi, CIO, and Shannon Okinaka, CFO of Hawaiian Airlines, Hawaii's largest and longest serving airline. Known for leading all U.S. carriers in on-time performance since 2004, Hawaiian Airlines recently entered a new chapter as part of Alaska Airlines following a completed acquisition last fall. The two airlines are now working toward integrating under a single FAA operating certificate, a process filled with complexities. John and Shannon bring a unique perspective shaped by Hawaiian culture and an exceptional partnership between technology and finance, an alignment that may be key to navigating transformation successfully. Thanks for tuning in. Now here's Charlie.
Hey, John and Shannon, it's great to see you guys again. It's hard to imagine, but we hadn't been together for 5 or 6 years since you came out to the ranch. But John, when you brought Shannon out, it was kind of a wonderful few days. And I'd like for you to talk to the group about what motivated you to do that, because the big theme that I'm on and have been on forever is, the CIO needs friends, and the key friends that the CIO needs is the CFO for sure and the CHRO. And I really believe those are the three big functions that see the entire company, right, from front to back. Everybody else sees their function and maybe an adjacent function. And I've worked for CFOs and I've worked for CEOs, but in either case, I always felt like I've got to get the CFO to be my best friend and be in the fight with me. So, kind of when you got to Hawaii and Hawaiian Air in 2017 or 2018, what'd you find and what motivated you to get the ranch visit going?
Hey Charlie, it's great to see you, and I can't believe it's been that long either. When I first got to Hawaiian Airlines, we saw patterns that we've seen at other places. A lot of money was being invested in IT, and the company wasn't getting the value. There was more work than capacity. There was questions around what was the most important thing to work on, and there was a huge modernization transformation or journey that we needed to undertake. And this was something that I knew that we were going to need the help of the CFO, who is Shannon. And so I knew there was going to have to be a strong partnership in order to pull this off. And so when I first got there, I really spent the first 30, 60 days just listening, not coming in with a whole bunch of ideas of what needed to be done, but just listening and understanding, specifically in Shannon's world, what she liked about the current IT organization and what she didn't like. And so we kind of, reached an agreement on where the current state was.
Mhm.
From there, as we started talking about what the future could look like, um, we started talking about the art of the possible and some of the things that we could do, but it
Mhm.
was going to take a pretty big investment and it was going to take many years to get there. And so, only having been there a couple of months, I felt like we really needed to bring the two organizations together. And, you know, um, and the model that the Feld Group has is a great model to do that. And so I asked Shannon if she'd be willing to bring her team out to the ranch. And that was quite a, kind of investment for her to say yes. But I was really excited that she did say yes, and the days we spent there were fantastic.
Mhm. Yeah, Shannon, the thing that was impressive to me is you didn't just agree to come, but you brought some of your key team members, and it seemed to be at a time where they were really busy, but you felt it was important enough for them to come and break away, because it's not just the CFO. It's the team of finance that can either look at things one way or look at things another way. So I remember they came in, a little, I wouldn't say cynical, but a little skeptical as to what we were doing. But when they left, they were pretty enthusiastic about the role they had to play and how they had to think about technology. So could you replay a little bit of that for your team and kind of what you got out of it?
Sure. And it is great to see you, Charlie.
Yeah.
It's been a few years. Yeah, from our perspective, when John came in, we knew we were investing a lot in IT, and we didn't always feel like we got the business outcomes that we were looking for, or at least not for the investment that we were putting in. A lot of times projects would start and then the budgets would have to grow and grow to get to a final product. But I think when we came to the ranch, I think it was important for us to come to the ranch. I don't think any of us really knew what we were going to do and what the purpose was. But I think one of the most important things that came out of it was the relationships. There was really good discussion on how IT was organized and what their goals were. We could have done that in the office, frankly, but I think being away in a new environment, really saying this is an important team. This is a team instead of this is the finance team and this is the IT team,
Mhm.
was really important. I needed people to be able to just focus on this because, like you said, they are always really busy. And I think going to the ranch, doing the exercises with the IT team, was a really good first step in building relationships that really needed to be built.
Mhm.
I think John and I had a good relationship, and it grew much further from that experience, from the ranch experience. But I really needed to bring the team along because, to your point, they really, depending on how they tell a financial story, can really
Mhm.
determine whether or not it gets approved.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think the big change and the big thing is, you know, if you're in a public company, people measure quarter to quarter results. An annual plan is a big boundary, but the kind of stuff that brings good results is to, design big, architect big, sell it big, and deliver it small. But, so much of the kind of complexity we have is thinking in 1 year project only increments, and most things are cross project. And, if you remember, I'm famous for the notion of a hairball, right? And little strings. You could see the decades connected of this project got halfway done, got connected to that project, got connected. And that's not how it needs to work, right? This is where the rigidity gets in the way, right? And you've got to get certain foundations right. So, if in an AI world now, you've got the brain, the extremities are the sensors and the robots and the tools at the edge. But if you've got a nervous system that sits in the middle, it looks like that, you're not going to be able to sense and respond very well. So, how did you manage to break through this notion of project by project ROI, year by year boundaries, and get to see a larger pic, not see, I mean, get to sell a larger picture to the street, to the analysts, because some of the things took a couple of years before they came about. Was that difficult for you and your team?
Um, no, I don't think it was that difficult because I think what John did really well, especially for some of the very foundational projects that we did or technology that he brought in. Usually, to your point, what we were looking for in each project, what's the ROI of this project? But what John kind of taught us and worked with us on for some of these foundational things, you won't necessarily see the return from that implementation, but here's how we're going to build on it over the years. And that's why we had to talk long term, because some of what we needed to do didn't have that initial return. But uh, our John's roadmap and the IT team clearly showed us that over the years, um, those foundational investments, had huge returns. And what was nice was we didn't have to wait 5 or 6 years. John, did a piece of the foundational, technology, and then gave us some of the business outcomes that we were looking for as he went along.
Mhm.
What I've seen in the past, or what I had seen in the past sometimes, was someone asked for a big modernization project or foundational project, and you have to wait 3 or 4 years because first you have to put the foundational technology in and then build on top of that. John's plan was a lot better. And so I think we had to talk long term for us to be able to see the full financial picture. So I think it was, I don't know if it was strategic on John's part in selling the
Mhm.
technology to the finance team, but I think it was really critical.
Yeah, yeah. I think, John, if you go back to when we were at Delta together, the thing that we connected with the finance organization, because Delta was really struggling in the late 90s, but the idea that when you modernize a fleet, you have a long-term vision, right? But you deliver one plane at a time, right? So it's not like you got to write a check for all that initially, but you begin to see the new planes show up, the old ones get retired, and that's when you start seeing the fuel costs, the maintenance costs get better, right? So we're trying to, as a profession, trying to get IT to be seen as other major investments, not like, well, we're special, so you need to write checks, or we're overhead and therefore, cut, cut, cut. It, it really is. How do you think about IT like any other major investment that's going to span years, require modernization, but how do you deliver some results along the way? Now, John, I know you've been in a number of other places, right? And pretty hard to get across. What was the difference at Hawaiian? I mean, I know you tried to sell bigger solutions at a couple of other places you were, and what what was the condition at Hawaiian that made it different? Was it relationships or was it the time and
I think Charlie's a little bit of the perfect storm, right? I think the relationships were key. Shannon and I had a CEO that really didn't believe in multi-year planning, and we
Mm-hmm.
both had tried separately to, change that thinking. So we decided to work together with the business units to create a multi-year plan. So we first created an unconstrained plan just to understand the sequencing and the prioritization of what we were trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
One of the key things that came out of that was the need for a hub. And, we needed to have a common way of integration, connecting systems together. We needed to have a common set of data, one source of the truth, because we had point-to-point integrations and we had data kind of everywhere, and it wasn't, always the same. And so, knowing this, we decided to go ahead and invest in an integration platform or a hub, but we didn't do it as a big science project. And we didn't say, hey, Shannon, give me $10 million and I'll be back in a year and a half. What we decided to do is then look at the kind of hot spots in the business that we needed to modernize. And we used that as a catalyst to start to build out some of the hub. So by executing the multi-year plan, it caused us to modernize kind of from the bottom up,
Mm-hmm.
and we were able to leverage the platform, year after year after year, whether we started in the airports and then went, to self-service or went to maintenance or where have you. We were continuing to modernize the platform that we're building upon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Shannon, when you look at times when they get tough, I know COVID was a very difficult time for everybody, but if you're midstream on some of these investments, how did you think about it? And, how did you have one foot on the accelerator, one foot on the brake instead of stop? And, because that's part of the hairball. You could see when the 2008 downturn came, you could kind of see when people pull back. Did you do anything special? Did you have a tough time with that or?
Um, and I've not shared this with John because I don't think I've ever been asked the question, but in hindsight, I kind of wish John and I talked more. I wish I talked to John more before, right when this was all starting to happen. I think, though, to be honest, I was just when the full realization of how big the pandemic impact could be hit me. I think I was a little bit in a panicked mode, and so John had a plan for contractors, and he knew um, what people were working on. We had our project management team and the IT team together, kind of try to gently bring projects to a pause with documentation. But in hindsight, and at the time, I didn't know if we were going to have government assistance or not. I didn't know how long it was going to last, so I don't know what I would have done even if I did talk to John.
Mhm.
Um, but just in hindsight, I wish I did talk to him a little bit more to say, are there certain things that we just should continue and we should continue spending the money on? I don't think we had that conversation. We had the conversation more about uh, our employees are first and foremost. So if we have to cut costs, and we did, it's got to be contractors first. And with the contractors went a lot of the projects. Um, I think, what we did as we came out, as we knew we were going to get government assistance, as we started coming out of the pandemic, business started coming back, um, was kind of reset the priorities. So there were some projects that we were working on pre-pandemic that we still haven't started up. And I think that's the right thing to do because what we did was we looked at what the business needed now going forward instead of trying to go backwards to say, well, this is what we were trying to accomplish. Let's just continue that path. So I'm happy that we did that, but I do kind of wish that at the time in 2020, I was a little bit more focused on working with John to really say, okay, what makes the most sense for the business as far as spend? Where are our pivot points? If business is really, really going bad, okay, then maybe we have to change it, and have plan A, B, C. But really, we just kind of went to I don't want to call it the nuclear option, but the kind of big, let's stop a lot of things.
Yeah, no, I remember the time well, and you know, those extraordinary times, but those extraordinary times seem to come every 5 to 10 years, and people have to go deal with it. So in a lot of cases, the CFO turns out to be the heavy, right? And that's okay, that's expected, but the CIO needs to maintain the relationship.
Yeah, I think one of the really important things that John brought to Hawaiian definitely was the importance of prioritization. So as a group, we would prioritize what was most important to the company. But then to your point, my FP&A group realized over time that they really had to work with the business units upfront to define what the business outcome, what the impact, if the financials were going to be, where we were going to see that financial benefit.
Mhm.
And then that helped us prioritize, that helped John's team focus on what was the most important projects in the company. And after IT delivered, then we, to your point, went back to the business and said, okay, you promised us XYZ, IT delivered, now we've got to see those benefits. And so it really did come back as a circle. And I don't think we were as strong before at setting those financial benefits, but that's where the FP&A team really had to evolve and have their role change to demand from the business units or work with the business units to identify those benefits and then make sure we get them after.
Yeah, and I think that's the formula for the future because, when you look at the, it's hard to imagine a company that doesn't leverage technology as a fabric because, we live in an era where functional excellence is table stakes, right? So you got to be good. You got to have a decent maintenance system. You got to have a decent whatever. But the real value comes in cross functional integration. As you guys know that just getting a plane off the gate requires piece of crew, a piece of baggage, a piece of tail number, a piece of passenger. There is no system that says we're ready to push back, right? Uh, and in that are complex functional systems. So, in many cases, there's not an owner of the cross-functional integration systems other than the CIO, the CFO, and I would add to that the CHRO. So somehow, I mean, in our framework, there are a few things that matter. One is a multi-year view. Two is you start out with a story, which is kind of here's the big picture, but then you go to a deal, which is a shorter period of time, say within the next couple of years, and that's when you start writing checks. And then you go to a plan, which is implementing something every 3 or 4 months that could begin to add value. And so I think, we're starting to get a lot more interest on the part of CFOs and business people. We were just with a team of people that was 80% business leaders, COO, and the staff, and a few people from IT, and they walked out of there saying, "Hey, we didn't really talk much about IT, did we?" I mean, it was mostly a business model conversation, an organization conversation, an economics conversation, and IT is just one of the major components, but it's a holistic view over a number of years as to what kind of company do you want to be, right? And so I'm very excited with the work you did. I know that John and the team were really pretty proud of some of the implementations that went on and, fighting through things together. So, I really appreciate you sharing this story with people. And I hope that people will take this, listen to it, and maybe show it to their CFO or show it to and say, look, we got to work differently here. So we're looking to help people with success stories, and definitely you guys have one. So I appreciate you coming and spending the time today, and maybe we can keep the conversation going on as we get a lot of feedback on these sessions. So thank you.
Charlie, thanks for having us.
Yeah. And Shannon,
Yes, definitely. It
thanks
was
for
fun.
jumping in. That was extra special. Thank you.